By the age of 32, my life took a very unexpected turn. I'd been on this comprehensive flying training course for about 1 month, but now I was pilot in command and flying solo. And once I'd done all my checks, I get my permission once again from air traffic control, and off I go. When I make my left-hand banking turn into wind, and as I did so, I'd seen a thin streak of visible yellow-orange flame as I looked to the left. And then I'd made my final banking turn now into wind, approaching now the active runway below in the distance. And as I'm running in, as I make that final turn, the fire immediately breached the cockpit down below where my feet were operating on the rudder pedals left and right. So initially, I panicked and I thought to myself, my God, this is for real. This is no drill. I've got to get this aircraft down. And as I'm descending, I'm watching altimeter spin down through 900, 800, 700 feet. And the fire is actually building up from the footwell in front of me below, up my lower limbs. And the problem was I was only wearing cargo shorts to the knee. My lower legs were exposed and bare, and some like Oakley wraparound sunglasses. But my body largely was quite exposed to the brunt of the flame that was building up within the lower reaches of the cockpit. When I got to about 500 feet indicated, and the fire is now about belly height within the chamber of the small two-seater cockpit, I'm sat there with my left hand on the control stick in between my knees, my right hand on the throttle, and I'm in the left-hand seat of this small single-engine piston training aircraft. And it was a nightmare. And I had to make a very hasty decision about what I was going to do next. And it just came to me, call it like an epiphany, a light bulb moment. But I decided to gently veer away from my line directly with the runway ahead in the distance. And I veered gently to my left just a few degrees. And I started to run in, and still descending, towards a grassy sort of stretch in the distance, which I felt was a relatively safe area to aim for. And I immediately go into the drill that I'd been taught again and again by the US flight instructors. So the emergency protocol. So everything following the dashboard from left to right, off, off, off in the sequence. And I carefully unbuckled my 3-point harness. I opened my left-hand canopy door. I also tore off the headset, and I needed to do what I was about to do. And so approximately 50 feet running in, looking, checking, looking, with fire now up to my face and neck, and I'm hyperventilating through the corner of my mouth, so with my one eye shut, in a vain bid to protect the eyesight from the lapping flames against my face and to protect my airway from flame ingress. I was like Jack Rabbit. I managed to clamber up onto the seat, clamber out onto that left wing, low wing aircraft, and I got out and stood out onto the wing momentarily, clapped my hands above my head in the prayer position, and then I just went for it. I looked at the horizon. I took a giant leap off the back, so the trailing edge of the left wing. I snapped my feet and knees together in the air, and I made that jump approximately 15 feet above the ground, whilst gliding in at approximately 32, 33 miles per hour. The good news is I got away with it. I managed to jump relatively cleanly, feet and knees together, but I hit the ground, the long Florida grass, like a sack of potatoes, like a sack of spuds, as we call it. I hit that ground. It was a massive impact. So my lower limbs kind of crumpled beneath me as I sort of thrust forwards. And I then face planted the long Florida grass. I had a bilateral nasal fracture, supraorbital eye socket fractures above both eyes. My left index finger hit the ground a bit awkwardly, hyperextended and fractured. A couple of ribs got fractured in the impact. My clavicle, so my collarbone. Also, I inadvertently ruptured my large intestine, the colon, and also lacerated my liver internally, which was bleeding. But the worst of it was the fact that I was 63% third and fourth degree burns, for the record. I didn't know that at the time, but that came to light subsequently in the official sort of medical diagnosis, having been subsequently airlifted from the scene with a US medical response, which I can only describe as Hollywood-style emergency response. So there was local police, there was ambulance, there was 2 fire engines on scene. I don't really visually get to see all of this because I was temporarily blinded from the reaction of the burns to my face. So my face swelled up, something chronic, and I couldn't really see. But I had subsequent photographic images from the scene. But I did hear everything that was going on. And I'm very fortunate at this stage, because not only was I still hanging on by a thread, that helicopter was able to transport me just 25 minutes through Orlando airspace. And I got lucky in the sense that probably arguably one of the US top tier medical facilities. And I was subsequently medically cared for around the clock. So we're talking 24/7 for the next 6 months of my life. They placed me in drug-induced coma. We're talking around about $2.7 million worth of intervention. You know, thank God that we have the insurance. Yeah, the rest is history, really. I mean, the painful journeys then began of rehabilitation and reconstruction. And I had to date 63 surgeries under general anesthetic between the US and various medical facilities within the UK. So I've had an awful lot of specialist interventions over the years. Back in the day, I've managed to almost come back from the extreme edge or the brink, from pneumonia, from septicemia, all manner of, horrendous infections, that you pick up in the hospital when you're so vulnerable. So 63% of total body surface area was compromised with 3rd and 4th degree burns. And 4th degree burns means it's down to the bone. So my lower limbs, where the fire started in the cockpit at the lower reaches, was where my shins, therefore, got the longest exposure to those flames. So my shins, even to this day, are like really bony, and there's not an awful lot of skin tissue there. And that was hence the 4th degree burn. All in all, I am a bit of a walking miracle, quite frankly, that I've come through all of that. As one surgeon once put it to me, they have to effectively rob Peter to pay Paul, meaning that they will skin graft certain areas, and they will literally, shave off parts of the body that weren't damaged or compromised. So in my cases, they shaved sections of my upper thighs, the front of thigh, the back of thigh, the buttocks even, sections of my lower back. They then carefully put this through a small rolling machine, if you will, which punches holes in the skin, and then they can get like a mesh from that skin. They can then, with the holes within the skin, they can then stretch it out further in order to cover, areas of sort of greater damage, if you will. But interestingly, they can only perhaps graft the same areas 2-3 times, perhaps at a push, because then the risk is you compromise it too much, it loses quality and viability, if you will, from a surgeon's perspective. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. They're like, how does it take so long? Well, because it's a painstakingly slow process. And don't forget, skin is the major organ of the human body. There was something innate within me that wanted to hold on. There was something that refused to give up. But believe me, I had my very low moments. And at one stage, I considered, the prospect of assisted suicide. I'm very lucky that I did not go down that road entirely, but I certainly was in communication, and I had, major thoughts of that, because I was in a very dark place and in a very bad way, sort of physically, which subsequently affected my mental health, well-being. Obviously, that was about 18 months into my ordeal and my journey, and I was still very much within the care and the expertise of the surgeons that were trying to help me. But for a while, I didn't feel like I was kind of making progress, and that I was unlikely to come through that and properly sort of survive. So it was a hideous journey that I went through, and trying to hold on to that notion of a will to live and a will to survive is a really difficult thing when you are subject to such tremendous trauma. And I won't deny that there was some support along the way as well, friends, family, associates through the armed forces that came to visit. And there was somebody from the church that stepped in as well that supported me there. So it was basically a friend of the family. The individual came from Zimbabwe in deepest sort of southern Africa. He gave me a bit of an ultimatum and sort of requested that I really hold on, and I was mortified. I didn't think that I could. I felt like I was done, that I was totally ready to throw the towel in. He gave me a bit of an ultimatum and said that he would assist me and help me. But I did hold on, and I took that ultimatum, if you will, and we sort of shook hands as men. And then things started to turn a corner for me, but not overnight. And I, would hasten to add that I still had a bit of an uphill battle for the foreseeable months ahead. But eventually, after about a 2-year duration, a 2-year period, I got out of the hospital, and I was at home for about 1 year with district nurses and my mum literally helping me with all things domestic. It was just a really difficult time for me to ultimately hold on, because it was such a long journey. But again, with that willpower and determination, I ultimately surprised myself, and I got there in the end. It just took a lot of years. I would say 3 years physical healing, but about 5 years of the sort of mental acceptance and the cognitive ability to keep going and to stay motivated, day by day. Take every day as it comes, and really keep your chin up and pull your socks up and just get on with it every day and stay motivated. One of the big things that helped me was that I remained active, and I got back into my active sort of lifestyle. The second year, I was up on my feet a bit more, and I started to walk small distances, like meaning, to the nurses' station and back again on the ward. And then within the space of weeks, I was walking down the corridor and back, and then that corridor extended to like the perimeter of the hospital. And then when I got home in year 3, I was walking to the end of the cul-de-sac in the street and back, and do that a couple of times, then sort of around the block. Then the block got bigger, right? If you understand, I kept pushing the boundary, and that was always what I was all about. So that former me sort of pushed through in the in that long and bitter ordeal of my recovery and my personal rehabilitation. Yeah, 15 years on, I am still an active chap. I do my best. Unfortunately, I was just subject to quite a major injury, but not on the level that I described with the big burns. We were in Norway on a special invitation, and I was doing some Nordic skiing cross country. And I was, unfortunately, one morning quite early, I was doing a downhill stretch, and I had a bit of a loss of control with the lower limbs. But I took quite a hard fall. I must have thrown my right arm down, and I ended up inadvertently fracturing my right upper arm. So you don't really see it, but I've got this big brace on the right arm at the moment with a displaced fracture of the right side humerus bone. I mean, I'm doing a bit of walking now, but I can't do an awful lot because of the state of my arm. But I will get there, and I'm one of these guys that refuses to lay down. Don't get me wrong, it's probably unfinished business. I'd like to go back to Norway again, and not necessarily do Nordic skiing, but I'd like to go and do a bit of hiking. And I'll probably get an opportunity to do some scuba diving as well. Scuba diving is probably one of my greatest passions. And I think possibly another expedition back to Malaysia next year, probably trekking. So there's all sorts of things that generate in my sort of life and my pipeline, and the sort of ongoing journey of Jamie Hull version 2.0. You may not necessarily see, the end of the tunnel, that, you may be trapped. You may feel that you're trapped, but time is definitely a great healer. And if you are prepared to just hold on and keep pushing and keep going, eventually you will see light at the end of the tunnel, and you will perhaps heal, or you will get better. You just have to believe. Yeah, yes, it happened to me, but I don't dwell on that. I refuse to be a victim. It does not dictate my legacy. It was simply a marker of a period of my former, younger self. But I'm still here, and I choose to keep marching forwards, and I choose to try to live an active and inspired living and an existence, to go forwards. And I tried to share that message with others, and to ultimately, profess to say, look, no matter how dark life may seemingly become, it's up to us to hold on. It's up to us to hang in there. And believe me, if you hang in there, you might just surprise yourself.